Theresa May really has been ambushed here. This was not how this summit was meant to go. She thought it was a moment that would de-escalate tensions over Brexit, bring the sides further together, end up with a bit of progress, maybe even a timetable towards a deal, bring that into view, even if the shape of the deal wasn't entirely clear. She was going to achieve that by appealing over the heads of the Eurocrats, as they're called, the European Commission, to national leaders who would see things her way, who understand the economics of frictionless trade and the need to stay close and the rest of it. Well, she tried it last night and it didn't work. Tonight they came out at their press conferences and in various statements saying that her Chequers plan still wasn't acceptable. Theresa May's theory about why this has happened is that it is them, the EU, playing hardball. This is tactics in the negotiations. She came to a press conference looking visibly angry, I have to say, and made that point in language, you know how cautious she is, in language which was pretty unfamiliar. She pretty much said that the plans that the EU had come up with were not serious, not credible. So it leaves you at the end of this summit wondering, is this a blip, a pretty major blip, but just a tactical thing? Are the assurances that European leaders, London says, have been giving to Theresa May, that they really do want a deal and they think one is viable, are those assurances going to come back on track, not least with Theresa May unveiling some of her additional proposals quite soon on the backstop and regulation between Northern Ireland and Britain? Could this all just be swept away, or is this a case of Britain, as some would argue it has done in the past, completely misreading European leaders, maybe misjudging how much, for them, the politics of the EU project regularly trumps economics? This is how day 2 of the Salzburg summit went. After 28 leaders posed for the group photo, nearly all of them went back to the meeting room for the next session. One leader said her goodbyes. Theresa May wasn't allowed back in for their next discussion about her Brexit plan. But she waited around, keen to make a last good impression on leaders before they returned to the table. There was an embrace for President Macron, the man Britain believes is leading the hardliners who won't soften the EU position. The kisses don't seem to have worked. With Theresa May safely excluded from the meeting room, Michel Barnier was brought in the front to brief the leaders on the negotiations he's been leading for them. The Salzburg meeting was meant to be the one where tensions reduced and a date for a deal came into view. Instead, there was no special crunch summit announced, and leaders like President Macron emerged saying Chequers was not acceptable. The French president said that was the consensus in the room. And then the European Council president, thought to be friendlier than some to the British position, confirmed that.
Everybody shared the view that while there are positive elements in the Chequers proposal, the suggested framework for economic cooperation will not work.
At her press conference, Theresa May appeared angered and suggested the EU was simply playing hardball.
I have always said that these negotiations were going to be tough. And at various stages of these negotiations, different tactics would be used as part of those negotiations.
She tried a little hardball herself. She was ready to walk out of talks.
But let nobody be in any doubt that, as I've always said, we are preparing for no deal. So that if we get to the position where it is not possible to reach a deal, then the British people can be confident that we will have done what is necessary to ensure we make a success of leaving the European Union, regardless of the terms on which we do so.
Amongst those listening at the door, Ollie Robbins, the chief official negotiating Brexit. On the BBC on Monday, he was heard telling the Prime Minister in a meeting that her Chequers plan was a game changer and was gaining traction across Europe.
Our white paper remains the only serious and credible proposition on the table.
For around 10 minutes last night, Theresa May was allowed to make a plea to leaders for her approach. Number 10 had hoped it might spur the other leaders to assert themselves over the European Commission negotiating team.
I don't think it's the good time to alter the techniques of this process.
She's not going to peel you apart from each other.
No, I don't think that is the method. At the end of the day, it will have to be agreement we'll all have to sign up, so and has to go through the European Parliament, so we need a wide support.
This morning amongst the leaders there was only one outspoken ally for Britain.
We should have a fair approach. and to have a good deal with them, how to continue.
I think some of your colleagues are trying to punish them, maybe pushing them.
No, it's a very general approach.
Mr. Orban,
But we have a camp, quite number of countries. Hi, President. Who would? How are you? There are some others, like Hungary, who don't like that kind of approach, and we would like to have a fair Brexit.
But for many here, Viktor Orban has near pariah status.
I think the solution to the problem of migration.
Don't let them in, and those who are in, sent home. That's so simple.
Good meeting, but we're a long way off yet.
In reality, the morning meeting between Theresa May and the Irish Taoiseach was said to be anything but good. Theresa May seems to have been surprised by how badly things went here. She's promising new proposals on the regulation checks and Northern Ireland soon. Europe is demanding much more dramatic change and is saying the October summit in 4 weeks' time is the deadline. There had been a hope in Number 10 that this summit would be a shot in the arm for the Chequers proposals. The EU leaders have effectively, I think, shot Theresa May, winged her, maybe shot her in one of her legs. She has only days to go before the Tory party conference, one of the really big tests that this was meant to help her through. Her project now looks truly friendless, and her opponents are already making hay and will be making hay with this next week. What does she do from here? Does she, as she was talking about in that press conference, push ahead with plans for no deal? We know most of the people she admires in government think no deal is a very dark place to go, and she's more or less said that herself in some of her statements. Does she reach, as David Davis, the ex-Brexit secretary, would like her to do, for the free trade agreement he says is sitting nearly in mint condition in the safe in his department? That would be an extraordinary turnaround. She'll probably plough on with her approach, but given how wounded they're feeling in Number 10 tonight, you wonder with what success.
Gary Gibbon in wonderful Salzburg, thanks very much. Well, we sent our chief correspondent Alex Thompson on a road trip today across the great Brexit divide, from the beaches of North Berwick through the Tweed Valley and down into the post-industrial heartland of Ashington and Northumberland. And there was an interesting consensus and message. Just get on with it. Alex is in Ashington first now. Alex, over to you.
Certainly am, Matt. Yes, the memorial pit wheel here in Ashington, in what was once not just the biggest pit village in the UK, but they say the biggest one in the world. And it marks the end of a very varied journey, different landscapes, different industrial and agricultural heritage that we move through today from East Lothian. And of course, different views of Brexit on both sides of the border, as you would expect. We expected division, we expected strongly expressed opinions. Obviously, we got those, but we didn't expect that message coming from both sides, from Brexiteers and Remainers alike. And it's a pretty strong message, albeit, I should stress, completely unscientific, of course. Pretty strong message to the Prime Minister. Somehow timeless and tranquil this morning, where the Firth of Forth unwinds into the North Sea. Craigleith on one side, the amazing Bass Rock on the other, and right behind me the Isle of May. See what we did there? And this, on shore, of course, North Berwick. And in North Berwick, more people voted to remain in the EU than almost anywhere else in the UK. Among the early morning dog walkers, a Remainer businessman who said what so many would tell us today on both sides of the divide.
At the end of the day, we had a vote. The vote is to get out and do something else, so let's get on with it.
And of course that Remain refrain. How do we function without imported EU labour?
Living in an area like this and talking to farmers that I know who say that they couldn't get their crops in without people coming from Eastern Europe, who are a tremendous workforce. Yes, it needs to be controlled, but we still need these people to help us, and we help them.
With an elderly, affluent demographic, North Berwick tells a certain story. But we had to get south, moving on through East Lothian to Dunbar, where the Food Hamper Cafe was already packed. A younger, less affluent clientele here. Timothy Staples, Brexit then, Brexit now.
We contribute a hell of a lot more than, say, some of the emerging European countries that come into it in EU. We subsidise a lot. So surely, if we're not subsidising, that's better for us financially, surely.
And of course here, the strong sense from many that Brexit England just isn't listening anymore to Remainer Scotland. You sound like you feel left out.
We do feel left out. It's because obviously we have our say on certain things, but it's just like it's, you know, when it comes to Westminster, they make all our decisions, but then we've got differences, so like our NHS is different, our school system's different, but when it comes to what we want, it's like, oh no, you don't matter. You know, we don't need to listen to Scotland, they don't matter.
South again over the Tweed from majority Remain Scotland to majority Brexit England. And then west, up into the rolling fells of the Cheviots, farming country. And if there were any tractors out today, Channel 4 News were there to get in their way.
Just have to get on with it because they're going to do it anyway. Whether it's I voted against it. I didn't want it, but obviously more people did want it. So I don't know. We
just got to get the best deal we can.
Just have to try. Yes.
Again that thought, and again from a Remainer. Just get on with it. 50 miles south, we sense another John Deere out there planting winter cereals. We'd soon put a stop to that. No time to lose.
I've been a restaurant manager, bar managers, I've managed nightclubs, been a school teacher. I voted to leave. I've spent 8-10 hours a day in the car listening to the radio, and it's all about Brexit.
Are you happy with it, the progress?
Well, my view on it's very simple. What we're waiting for, let's just get out.
And then into the old industrial belt of South Northumberland. But the days of winning deep seam coal here in Ashington are long gone, the stuff of memory and heritage. Northumberland generally is a strongly Brexit area.
I think the EU's just too greedy. They want too much money.
Too greedy?
Too greedy.
Too expensive for the UK? Rosalie Robinson was Brexit. Now, though, she's not so sure.
Well, I just thought, really, probably listening to a lot of people, and a lot of people will say, no, we'll do it, we'll leave, it'll be better off, but I don't know if we are.
Even so, Rosalie, like so many we heard from today, from the beaches of North Berwick to the mining legacy of Northumberland, said those 5 words: just get on with it.